It is now 6:06, and I will call to order this online public meeting. It is November 1st, 2023. My name is Julie Bond, and I am the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. Regular meetings and public hearings of the Clark County Historic Preservation Commission are held in a hybrid format, with both in-person and virtual participation options for commissioners, staff, and the public. This will allow for safe participation by commission members, staff, and any citizen interested in attending. For those of you joining remotely via computer, you should be able to see tonight's meeting agenda on your screen. If you can't see the screen and have joined by phone only, I will be announcing the agenda items as we move through the meeting's topics. Members of the public and applicants that have joined remotely are attendees. Other event participants cannot hear your audio unless you are acknowledged by the commission chair or staff and are unmuted. This evening's agenda is planned as follows: roll call and introductions, prior meeting notes approval, public comment for subjects other than public hearings on this meeting's agenda, as there will be specific public comment periods as part of hearings. Revitalize Washington debrief, rules and procedures update and bylaws discussion, old business, updates and announcements, good of the order, and adjournment. We will now have a roll call of HPC members who are present for this meeting. Commission members, please say "I'm here" after I call your name. Jan Bader.
Sorry,
I'll try this again. Jan Bader.
I'm having connection issues. I'm here.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Morgan Fraser.
Here.
Yes, thanks, Jen. Andy Gregg.
Here.
Heidi Mandler Huff. Elaine Thatcher. Here. John Zingali.
Here. There we go.
And I'm here, Julie Bond. Okay, first item on the agenda after roll call is the approval of the meeting notes, last meeting's notes. Does anyone have any comments on the draft October 4th meeting notes? I do, if no one else does. My first one is, can we please add vice chair after Elaine Thatcher's name?
Thank you, Julie.
And there was one other item that I wanted to add under our discussion on the bylaw revisions. During that call, we had also said, in addition to phasing them, we had wanted to be provided a list so we know which sections we will need to have ready to come with comment. And I believe that was something we were going to get from staff so that we would know which meeting was which section of the bylaws. So I think it's important to note that, at least in brief, on the agenda. I mean, on the notes, on the meeting notes.
I think I understand what you mean. The bylaws themselves are the very first section. They're their own section.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the meeting notes didn't capture that part. And I think it's important to capture that in addition to phasing things out, we also expect some kind of agreed upon schedule. So like December meeting, we're going to talk about this section of the bylaws. January meeting, this section. February, this section. March 8th, this section, until we can kind of see our plan. And that wasn't mentioned in the notes, but I know we discussed it. So I thought it would be worth even just having a bullet identifying that we discussed that we're going to also like move forward that way.
Okay.
Thank you. Those are the only two things that I had for the notes. No one else? I will take a motion for approval for the October 4th meeting notes.
So moved. It's Andy.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. The motion has passed. We will now take public comment on any items outside of public hearing items. We will begin with attendees in the room. However, there are no attendees in the room. So we will move on to public comment from online attendees. Susan, can you please read the instructions?
Absolutely. If you are using a computer or WebEx application on a tablet or smartphone, if you'd like to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand. There are instructions how to do this on the screen. Typically, the hand icon is located towards the bottom of your screen, but you may need to click the icon that looks like a circle with 3 dots in order to see the raise hand option. For anyone on the telephone audio only option, please dial *3 on your phone's number panel to raise your hand. Staff will be able to see hands once they are raised and will request to unmute you one at a time. Please note, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person in order to accommodate all speakers. I do not see any raised hands, although, yes, I do see a raised hand. Holly Chamberlain, please unmute yourself now.
Thank you, and good evening, commissioners, staff, and guests. This is Holly Chamberlain from the Historic Trust with some updates for you. At Providence Academy, the Providence Pilgrimages, which are tours and retreats for employees of the Providence Health Network, have concluded for the year. 300 staff members visited in 2023 from 3 different states. Occupancy continues to improve after the pandemic downturn, with a current rate of 91%. The new wireless fire alarm system for the Academy has been completed and inspected by Vancouver Fire. Fire alarm monitoring for the kindergarten building has been upgraded to a new cellular system. The West Gallery porch reconstruction project is complete and the entrance door back in use. On Officers Row, the 35th annual Low Legacy Veterans Day Parade is on Saturday, November 11th at 11 a.m. on Officers Row and environs. Clark County Sheriff John Horch is the Grand Marshal this year. All are invited. A roll-top desk, which belonged to Brigadier General Thomas Anderson, former commander of Vancouver Barracks, is once again at the Howard House, where Anderson and his family lived from 1886 to 1898. The donor, a descendant of Anderson's, worked with the trust to bring the desk back to Vancouver and have it on display. The Clark County Historical Museum graciously agreed to accept the desk into its collections, but made a long-term loan to the trust so that this important artifact can be on public view as the donor wished. Much of the outdoor building stewardship work, such as painting, porch repairs, handrail installation, and chimney maintenance, has concluded for the year. 3 buildings on Officers Row received complete exterior painting this past summer. The 2024 capital work plan for the site has been approved by the Historic Reserve Properties Committee. 2 new portable bars have been purchased to enhance event rentals at the Artillery Barracks and Red Cross building. The city has made a great effort over the past month to repair the streetlights for Officers Row and environs, including replacing some bulbs with LEDs. The Trust was pleased to welcome a delegation of Polish city officials to Officers Row and the West Barracks on October 23rd and provide them with a tour and the history of the rehabilitation. The Trust submitted comments on the IBR determinations of eligibility and findings of effect documents and IBR Section 106 Programmatic Agreement Concept Draft and the accompanying Historic Built Environment Treatment Plan. Annual fire extinguisher, fire alarm, and sprinkler testing at all city-owned buildings on the Historic Reserve and at the Academy has been conducted by Fire Systems West. The Washington Main Street program is offering the Equitable Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Workshop on November 6th and 7th in Ellensburg. This free opportunity for rural communities will be held at the Central Washington University Business Foundry. For more information, go to preservewa.org. More dinosaurs, unicorns, astronauts, witches, superheroes, and ninjas than ever before seen at the Artillery Barracks showed up this past Saturday for a pop-up children's museum. The Trust partnered with Columbia Play Project for the event, which drew more than 400 children, caregivers, and families to have fun with hands-on educational activities. Upcoming on Thursday, November 16th, is How Audio Technology Changed the World. The Trust invites the public to hear communications professional and longtime broadcaster Ross Reynolds speak about the impact that audio transmission has had on society and storytelling. This free program, in partnership with Humanities Washington, begins at 6 p.m. at the Red Cross Building, 605 Barnes Street. The annual Marshall House Holiday Tea returns on December 2nd with 2 seatings at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. with live music performed by Celtic Muse. Tickets are selling quickly, so if interested, plan to purchase your seat soon at the Historic Trust website. Special guest Santa will be coming to the Marshall House on December 9th. The public is invited for photos and craft projects. The free event runs from 10 to 2. Registration will be available online at the Trust website in mid-November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holly. Are there any other?
I do not see any other raised hands.
Okay, this concludes the general public comment portions of this meeting. Our next item is we will now discuss the Revitalize Washington Conference held in Vancouver by the Washington Trust of Historic Preservation on October 4th through 6th. A couple of us were able to attend, and this is now just an opportunity for people to share their experience. And Andy also presented, so I don't know, Andy, if you would like to get us started with discussion.
I'd be glad to. Thank you. My session took place in the historic Kiggins Theater at 10:30 on Thursday. I wanted to give a bouquet to Brad Richardson of the museum and to Dan Wyatt, the captain of the Kiggins Theater, for their assistance, because part of my presentation included screening of a 16 millimeter film that was discovered by Assistant Police Chief, or Fire Chief, excuse me, John Gentry in 1989 as the 8th Street Firehouse was being cleaned out for demolition and renovation and rebuilding of a new facility. That into our hands came a 1945 reel of color film of street scenes and social events and commercial enterprises and civic leaders of Vancouver in 1945. And in it were some scenes of the Kiggins Theater as happy crowds of moviegoers prepared to see the show. And so thanks to Dan and Brad, I was able to have historic footage taken in the Kiggins, played from the projection booth at the Kiggins for a part of my presentation. And the attendees seemed to really enjoy seeing the happy audiences, especially because one of the themes was about diversity and inclusion. And it showed that Vancouver did not practice segregation of its public accommodations or amusements as movie theaters were then known. And so statewide audience had some very good questions. The session, not surprisingly, ran overtime, and that I did receive positive feedback and was glad to be able to represent the Historic Preservation Commission at this event. And so I think that about wraps it up.
Thank you, Andy. That's great. I'm so glad you were able to do your presentation and that it went so well and that you were representing us as well.
Thank you.
I wasn't there, but it was fantastic to hear all the wonderful feedback and that your presentation went so well. I was really upset that I had to miss it.
Well, Elaine, truth to say, you heard most of it when we did the J.P. Kiggins presentation at the Historic Museum. And so I gave a slightly refined version that that reflected the objectives that Revitalize Washington wanted to have presented to participants. So, but thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Anyone else like to share their thoughts or experiences?
Yeah, so I got to go do the walk of Officers Row, and that was really neat for me, especially to hear how the community all came together to save those buildings. So I thought that was really was really neat to see.
Thanks, Heidi. Yes, and I was also able to attend, I actually was able to do a tour of the port, which was really fascinating, what goes on at the port, both our current port and then also Terminal 1 that they're developing down on the waterfront. And we had an elder from the Chinook, and we had Brad Richardson from the Historical Museum, and some others that did just a really phenomenal presentation of the Terminal 1 area and the history of the Chinook along the river, and their contributions to the history of this area. And then Brad kind of picked it up time-wise after that. And anyway, it was just a really fascinating, really excellent presentation, but more than that, it was just really great to see colleagues from all over the state here to hear about our history and to participate in these events. One of the other really, I think that one of the advantages of this conference is not only the presentations you get to do, but also walking around and meeting business owners. And I met a couple of business owners that were so excited to hear that I was on the commission and that we have a commission and what do we do and how are we involved. And it was just a really eye-opening and also affirming experience to talk to all these different people in our community who are interested in our work. So, all right, if there aren't any other comments, I will move on to the next item, which is rules and procedures update, specifically in relation to our bylaws. So we'll now discuss the ongoing project to update our HPC rules and procedures document. Tonight's focus is the bylaws section of that document. We'll begin with comments from Bart Ketching and then open up the discussion for members' input. Go ahead, Bart.
So at the risk of repeating some of what I talked about last week or last month, the staff has done a draft of amended bylaws based on direction coming from previous iterations of this commission, and it had been the intent to have that document in front of you folks tonight, but our computer networks have been down for a week and a half, and they just came back yesterday. So through discussion with you last week, we decided that the least we could do was have this, the current bylaws to look at and get comments and get the ball rolling on this. And at the same time, hopefully our attorney will have some capacity when she's done with this big appeal that she's working on. And so I don't have a staff report to present to you. What I would suggest, just looking at the 2008 version that we have in front of us, is that obviously there are some things that are clearly incorrect and outdated, such as the reference to 5 commissioners versus 7 and things like that. And of course, we can make a note that we're changing those. Those are already changed in the draft document. Perhaps what would be most helpful to myself and Susan taking notes here would be things that maybe you like about this document, things that you would want to keep, either if not verbatim, then the spirit of certain sections. Like I said, the updated document, which I just got access to again yesterday, so I couldn't, give it to you guys and have time to review in good faith, is roughly the same length, just laid out differently and has updated code sections. And so without pushing the conversation too much, if folks have had a chance to look at this, we could just open it up and work through it and say, hey, I like this part, I don't like this part. that would be my suggestion based on where we're at because of the technical difficulties that we had with our computers last week.
Before we begin the discussion, I just want to ask, so you do have that document now available with the previous comments and some edits and some rearranging?
Yes.
That is available now?
I have it. I was able to get to it yesterday when our network came online.
Okay. So I believe we were asked to review Section A. Did everyone get that email, that message to review Section A? I know I had made that request to you guys, and I did then do it, but I don't know if others received that message. I looks like I'm getting head shakes or confused looks, so maybe not.
I did not receive anything.
Okay.
I think it was in the email that we sent last Wednesday.
Perhaps.
Maybe not.
Yeah. So if not, I guess what I would ask is,
Bart was able to send
now
it
that we
to
have
me.
that now that we have that document available, I wonder if we should start fresh and get that document so that whatever we're reviewing, we're not having to do a second review based on the link that we had, which was the old document, correct?
The new, or there's not a new document because there is a draft document that got as far as ready to send to council earlier this year, and then we had other things come in front of that. And so that document was on our network drives that were locked up.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yes.
So
yes.
that draft version, because
Yes.
we have access, we have the link to the internet page that has the old
Yes.
non-draft version.
Yes.
So what I'm suggesting is, let's not look at that one, let's look at the draft that you were able to access yesterday, so then we are all looking at the same thing and we'll have comments and feedback on the same thing.
In real time?
And get it sent
no,
to us tonight, tomorrow, whatever, and then
that
we
was
can
the
begin.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. No, I don't think that is a good idea because that is the one that we wanted the attorney to look at first. That's what we talked about last month.
I think Chair Bond is suggesting that we would send out the document that we just got access to, and we would discuss it next month, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, okay,
because the
I'm
whole
totally
point
misunderstanding.
is to provide
Bart
feedback,
thought
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bart thought you wanted to review it tonight just on the screen.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So
No.
we'll get the document sent out, and then we can discuss it next month.
Okay. Yeah,
And
and
Bart,
I
we
think
do
what we can
recognize
do
this is a
today,
draft. Sorry, go
you
ahead.
can say that again, Jen. No, go ahead, Jen. Say that again.
Sorry, Bart, we do recognize that what you're going to send us is a draft and it still needs legal review. But in some ways it'd be helpful for the commission to provide input before it goes to sort of the final legal review. But I agree with Julie. There's really no point in us reviewing the old draft tonight because I know you guys have put a lot of work into this and are proposing a number of changes.
I'm fine with that approach. That was what I originally wanted to do. This was just to give us something to look at tonight because of the technical issues that we had. And I'm not trying to waste anybody's time.
Okay, so what I think maybe would help us is to identify, so in my mind, I thought we were going to come today prepared to talk about Section A. That's okay if we don't. But I think it would be helpful for us to break it up so we know what to prepare for next meeting. And also to guide us, do you want us to email you comments like track changes and then you can consolidate those into one version? Like it's complicated with this many people, right? So we want to make it as easy as possible on the commissioners and on you, because even if I were to send you my track changes right now, you could have 5 other track changes coming to you from other people. And so how would you like us to organize ourselves so each meeting we're not just talking about logistics, we're talking about the actual content of the changes we want to see? And I would suggest not talking about the stuff we like.
Yeah.
I think we can just talk about what we think needs to be changed or adjusted.
Yeah.
That will make it, I think, a little bit more efficient.
I'm going to go back to what I said last month in that I'm okay with either approach. It just needs to be consistent. Everybody needs to be doing the same thing. But I know that as the I just listened back to the meeting minute when I was doing the minutes for this meeting and listened back, and it seemed like our conversation got back around to, well, shouldn't we all talk about it together and have this kind of like a standing, like half hour or however much time this group wants to dedicate each meeting, as long as our workload isn't too much or too many hearings or something, and just say, hey, we're going to dedicate 20 minutes or half hour to discussing this each time till we get through it. And however much we get through, we get through. I don't know, Susan, if you have a different idea.
Just that Chair Bond suggested that we have a specific schedule for each month. So we would identify the pages or sections or whatever for each month, get a full schedule together. If for some reason it changes, we could update it, but we'll get a full schedule together and we will send out the first section for your review. And then we will, as we complete sections, we'll send them for legal review and bring back to you any changes that are suggested by both the city and the county attorney. We'll see how that works, and if we need to make changes, we can make changes.
Yeah, that captures what I was trying to get across. Thank you.
Okay.
Does anybody on the commission, though, have their thoughts? Like, do they agree with that? Does that sound like a good idea?
Sounds like a very practical way to do it to me.
I agree.
Thing, it's like I have to press it twice. Yeah, chunking it down is always good. I would say perhaps if we say like, hey, we're going to look at sections A and B next time, maybe also read C just in case if we move through them quickly, we can maybe address that ahead of time, maybe like over preparing a little bit just so we don't drag it out too long.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, okay, good. Sounds like, I don't know if Andy or Jan, you don't have to say anything, but want to give you the opportunity in case I know it's awkward on the phone. Okay, I see thumbs up. Thank you, Jan. And, thumbs up from Andy, too. Thanks, Andy. Okay, so.
Can I just follow
yes,
up?
Please.
So what I'm hearing, and I completely understand what you're wanting for next month. You want to see the draft document that we have access to now, and then have a tentative work plan, basically.
Yeah, now, we have this printout. Is this the draft that you're talking about? Okay.
That's the existing.
Okay.
And that's where the miscommunication is, because I thought with all the flurry of emails that we said, oh, well, we can't do that. Let's at least look at this and get some ideas about why this is it's not flawed, it's just completely out of date. And, but I would be happy to jump past that and get back to where we were. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so step one, if we can get the draft document emailed to us. Step two, today, decide which sections we need to come prepared with. And I think this will be open to the commissioners. Should we have our track changes made and come with our track changes and just go person by person and walk through the track changes that we would suggest? I know that this can be cumbersome, so I just want to get it.
Well, if we're all sending them to Susan and Bart in email, I'm not trying to put more work on you both. What if they were to compile a list of like the top suggestions everyone had and then go to the bottom? That way we don't have to have everyone saying, well, I had this idea. Oh, no, I had this idea, but I had the same idea. And just kind of consolidate it a little bit.
Now it works. Okay. So I don't want to put too much on their plate. So a suggestion I would make, because my teacher brain is working, is would we be able to open up a shared Google Doc and share some of our different thoughts, and we would then see what other people are already saying, the way it doesn't necessarily have to be put onto Susan and Bart.
I love that plan. Is that allowed? Can we have a shared Google Doc?
Or something.
It's allowed. I don't mind track changes copies. What I would suggest though is don't limit yourself to sections once I email it to you, because I just pulled it up. I'm not going to add it to the record right now because that would, be another thing, but I can see how long it is. And saying section A, section B, that it's not laid out the same way as the current one, and it's shorter. So I think you would be able to look at the entire document and have the entire bylaws section and intro and not feel overwhelmed. But if you do, then by all means say, let's just truncate the conversation. Okay, that's what I would put out here right now.
Well, and let me just add to that really quickly. If I recall, we completed a certain amount of changes review by staff so far, but we haven't gotten through the whole document. So the only, we'll get as much as we can get done. I just don't know that we would have more done each month than we have planned. Does that make sense? Commissioner Zingali's suggestion to do more is a good one, other than I think the idea was that staff would review them first. And if we're working ahead and we're a month ahead, that'll be great, and we can continue on and review more than was planned for that meeting, but we may not have more done each meeting. We'll at least get the scheduled comments complete, and then if we're ahead, we can do that, and if not, we wouldn't be able to do that.
I don't want to put words in John's mouth, but I'm assuming he thought that you guys were done with the document already.
I want to go back to John's suggestion of Google Doc, because I'm wondering if we just uploaded the whole thing, and then we may not understand what the sections are today because it's different, but we could say at least look at the first page, and then when we come back, then we'll see, okay, this is how it's structured, and now we can decide what we want to accomplish next meeting after page 1. Because the advantage to the Google Doc, if we're allowed to, if it's permitted, is we all can be in there at the same time, but there's still just one document, and there's not multiple versions. So do you think there's an advantage to doing that if we can, for privacy and whatever the roadblocks might be? Is that something you guys know today, or is that something you'd have to look into? Or
We'll have to check. I haven't used one for a public project like this before.
So the document itself doesn't need to be public. I'm saying we have a shared notes page, right? So if you make a note, but then Jan sees the same exact thing, she doesn't necessarily have to retype the same exact thing. She could just star it.
I think Susan's probably reading my mind right now. I think we might have a situation where we start having an impromptu public meeting over a series of comments, the same way that we have the issue of we don't want everybody to start a text string with all the commissioners on it, because if we get more than 3 of you talking together and making something that is a quasi-decision-making type of, even if it just feels very collaborative, we could run afoul of public meeting laws. And so we can double check. I don't think there's any problem with people individually sending track changes copies back as individuals. But as soon as you all start talking to each other in a forum, then we have a problem. Can you think of anything else, Susan, that I might be?
The only other time I have used Google Docs in one project here, but everybody was employees as opposed to commission members, and so I'm not sure how we would do it if everybody wasn't an employee. So we could check with IT, but yeah, it may just be easier to do the track changes. And honestly, you can copy and paste. I just finished another project, and we got comments from all of our Commission on Aging members on the updated aging readiness plan, and we just combined all of their comments. So it's not that hard. You can cut and paste.
Yeah, I think unless we hear differently, we should assume that it'll have to be just directly between commissioners and staff with comments till we get to a noticed public meeting. And that's why we have work sessions for these commissions. So I think you'll like the updated document, and it'll give us something really tangible to work with. It's much more streamlined, but please rip it apart when you see it. It's not going to hurt my feelings at all.
Okay. Okay, so that sounds like our plan. We'll get the draft. We will look at page 1. I don't know how it looks, so we can't really give ourselves, what section should we look at? Do you have it in front of you? I don't know if you can just tell us.
It's about a 7-page document with an introduction, and then it goes into the bylaws.
Should we look at the introduction, or
Yes,
are we
yes,
just,
it's all together, because it refers.
Okay.
There's terms defined and
Okay.
code sections referenced, so it's all cohesive.
Okay.
So is it 7 pages and then the bylaws start, or are the bylaws
No.
on the 7 pages?
No.
Okay, how about pages 1 and 2?
Introduction and whatever else.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable to me. Does everyone?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the other perspective and clarification on that. You know, we're all learning as we're going sometimes on these different things. So appreciate that, Bart and Susan.
Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any objections from our online colleagues. And so that's what we'll do moving forward. And then we will also have a better sense of what's in those 7 pages. So the next meeting we can decide, okay, we want to do pages X to X. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'm on vacation next week, so I'll make sure it gets sent before the end of the week.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about that before we move to our next agenda item? No. Okay. We'll now move on to old business and updates. The first item is the 2024 Historical Promotion Grants Review Subcommittee recommendation for the commission to forward to the county council, and Bart will present on that.
Let me grab my notes here. So I forgot to turn my camera on when we were talking before, but better late than never. I am here physically in the room. So the document that we just popped up with screen sharing is a draft using last year's staff report that we got to the county council after our subcommittee reviewed the historical promotions grants and then brought it to this commission. We were on a very similar timeline. The dates were almost identical, even though Susan and I tried to make the process go quicker. But the thing that we have going for us is that we only have a couple of grants this time around. And we don't really have a reason why we got fewer grants. We're not grant applications. We're not sure why, but we only had 2 full applications this cycle versus I think 7 last time, and that's with extra news releases and offering that info session. So not sure why that is. If it becomes a problem ongoing, then we'll have to change the outreach, but it might just be this particular cycle and who was interested. Suffice it to say, Commissioner Zingali, Commissioner Mandler Huff, and Commissioner Gregg all were able to get feedback to me, and it was a little bit difficult getting everybody in the same virtual room, but I was able to coordinate folks enough to have a meeting last week.
Last Wednesday evening. Sorry about that. Students didn't get picked up, so.
We do what we can. We do what we can. So I got input from everyone, and the two complete grant applications, as we have mentioned in the previous meeting. One was from the spearheaded by the Historical Museum and Brad's crew, but it's to benefit several different organizations in the different museums with the ongoing digitization effort. And then the other was a application from the trust and Holly Chamberlain for basically an oral history type project for folks that were integral in working on the first major round of rehab for Officers Row in the 80s. And so they really wanted to get the memories and experiences of those guys. So that's the other one. And they're both decent size requests, so it's not a bad thing that there weren't a ton of applications. The total amount between the two of them was the amount that's shown on the screen here, $36,009 and some change. And as I mentioned to the review committee, there is plenty of money in the fund to fund both of these grants. Susan, do you remember, is it 53 or 57,000 that's the policy cap? I can't remember offhand.
It's been 50 the last couple
Just
of years.
50 even?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I had a higher number. So the budget, our budget has an ongoing amount that they allocate to keep the fund healthy. So in extreme situations they can go over, but they try to keep the grants at a 50,000 cap. So we're not in any danger of going over that. Both of these requests meet the criteria of the nonprofit organization, historical purpose. You know, they're not paying staff pensions out of it or anything. So I don't have anything to add other than the committee enthusiastically recommends approving both the grants, and the little caveat that I mentioned last time that we have the two grants from last year that needed extensions. The if we can, sorry, I'm doing two computers here. I left a highlighted paragraph there for your recommendation, and the paragraph above it there, the in addition paragraph, mentions that there was the two extension requests. Those also don't create a budget issue because their money then doesn't get taken out of last year's funds. It doesn't even push over this year's cap if they were standalone grants. And the Port of Ridgefield extension request was because they could not get a contractor to do the work in time, and the Friends of the Fort was because they couldn't get full access to the archives that were out of state for the historical figure that they're working on. And so they both believe that they can get those done this year, and that wasn't something that needs to go to council, but we just wanted everybody to be aware of those extension requests. I can answer questions, and we can have a motion to approve when you're ready.
Any questions? Okay, thanks, Bart. I will now take a motion to recommend the approval of the subcommittee's recommendation to the County Council for the 2024 historical promotion grants, including the 2023 extension requests. All those in favor say aye.
I move that it be approved.
I think.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, thank you, Andy. The motion has passed. Okay. Now the second item under old business and updates are updates from any of our subcommittees. This is now the opportunity for them to provide any updates. I believe we have 3 subcommittees. We have the demolition subcommittee, Demolition Review Subcommittee, the Design and Review Guidelines Subcommittee, and the Outreach. So if any of those have updates, please raise your hand. And
Do you mean website instead of design and review guidelines? Oh, I must have.
I mean,
the name.
Yeah. Okay, I don't see any from the other two. I will provide an update for the subcommittee who is working on the website, which is part of the review and design guidelines group. We are making a lot of progress. We had requested that everyone please provide the bios to Susan. I don't know if Susan, if you want to mention anything in relation to if you need anybody to send you anything. If you haven't, please do.
Commissioner Bond, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So for the bios, is everyone's bio like going on one page? So you just want like a paragraph?
Yeah.
What's the format?
Yeah, so the format will be similar to the Commission on Aging, which is there will be just a short paragraph for each person. They'll have their name, if they have a title, and then the paragraph about themselves. In some cases, there are photos. We haven't gotten to that stage yet, but just a paragraph about yourself.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, there we go. This is just, it's one of those days. I was able to send the group pictures that we took of just the counselors, but then also the counselors and staff, what was that, September, finally to Bart. Apologize that it took a little bit to get that to you. So that can also go up there. I may have to edit my bio. I think I sent you a little bit long, but we can take care of that. And then I did receive an email possibly from Julie and Elaine about some outreach activity ones that we were going to discuss too. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, and so it is coming along really well. We're making a lot of progress. Thank you all for sending your bios. Thank you for the photos. And I think Susan has a comment.
Thank you. I'm not going to call anyone out, but for those who are still working on their bios, if you can just send them to me, that would be great. Thank you.
I'll call myself out. I'll have it in tomorrow. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm in that boat as well of I'm calling myself out.
Nobody else has to call themselves out. It's okay. Just send it to her. This isn't a confessional. It's all right. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to the next item, which is a new topic called announcements. And I made this request because there are several things that are coming up, and I wanted an opportunity to just mention some of them. The first item is that we are going to, next meeting on December 6th, we are going to take the camp presenter who suggested that we do a year in review as part of our meeting, and we're going to come together next week and have that on our agenda where we'll do a review of our previous year, things we accomplished, lessons learned, and so forth. So we will have we'll have a compilation of different activities that we did, but also come prepared if there's things that you want to share about things that you just want to reflect on for the last year. The presentation, or at least the items that I had, I put together a compilation of all of our different meetings. I started in September of last year because we didn't have a lot of certificates of appropriateness, and I wanted to include some of them, and they were in the tail end of last year. So just, it doesn't have to be January to December. It can be September to December. But we will be talking about that at our next meeting. Then the next item for announcements, okay, so this has been on my mind for a while. Or there are a couple of activities or some things that I've been trying to respond to our increasing need to strengthen our historic preservation codes. And, you know, we have the I-5 bridge coming through soon. We have a lot of downtown development. We have, we're a very fast-growing area, and I feel like we don't want to be left behind as a commission. And so Elaine and I have brainstormed some activities and some ideas that we'd like to share with the commission to get your feedback and thoughts on activities or speakers or things that we can prioritize for the coming years. It could be plural. So the first one is I reached out to the CLG coordinator at DAP, Michelle Thompson, to talk to her about our ongoing discussion to improve our design guidelines, to improve and to develop some, really. And she has informed me that there is a CLG grant that's going to be posted in January, and they have quite a bit of money specifically for this purpose and for many things. So she and I had a very productive conversation, and her recommendation was that if we are interested, that we put together our proposal for this grant and that we can include many different things in it. So things that I was thinking of and things that she was also helping me brainstorm was to do a survey. We have a survey out there. We have multiple surveys out there, but a comprehensive survey, I think, has eluded us a little bit, and perhaps we have it, but I know for the years I'm on the commission, we haven't received it, we can't find it, or it's not available to us. But either way, even if we do have a survey, things change all the time, and surveys should be an ongoing activity. So the grant could potentially be for a survey of our county, and then using that survey to then develop design guidelines for what we have in our inventory. The other, and where are our gaps, what do we have, and then how can we provide guidance to people? The other one is to identify potential neighborhoods in our county areas that we may want to approach to talk to about historic designations. I think we have a lot of interesting neighborhoods in Vancouver, at least, and I know we have others elsewhere in our county that we're not looking at, and we could look at if we have a comprehensive understanding of what we have. The other thing, I'm sorry, there are quite a few items for this grant, is to do an audit of our code. How can we strengthen it? What steps and recommendations would need to be put into place to make it a stronger code? She also recommended that once we have this broader understanding of our needs, we could also create a local registered district for our current overlay areas, make our authority in those areas stronger. That would be something we would determine, I think, at that time, but that would be what we would hire out to do as part of this whole package. So those are just some things I wanted to throw out there in relation to that grant. I want people to be aware this grant is coming up. We would have 4 months to develop the grant proposal. She did provide me a name of someone that they have used in the past to do work very similar to this that could help with understanding what we need to put in the grant proposal. But I just want to mention it now so that either we create a subcommittee to brainstorm and draft and work on this, or if the review design guidelines subcommittee has the bandwidth to do it, we could also put it there. But I did want to mention this because I think it will be a high priority for us given the time frame that we would have to do a grant. Before I move on to the next one, does anyone have questions about that or comments?
Chair Bone, what do you recall what the name of the grant was? Is it different than the standard CLG grants?
No, it is a CLG grant.
Okay, just the annual CLG cycle.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She says they don't post on, they have a lot of grants opportunities on their website, but they don't post this one because it's unique to CLGs. And so she put me on her listserv to give me, I mean, I'm sure it'll become public when it's out there, but she did mention that they don't have it posted.
The one that closes in March, I think.
In April. She said it closes in April, but maybe it's April 1st, so I don't know. But yeah, she said that we would have from January to April to
an annual
something.
cycle. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's something for us to make some decisions on in the future, but just exciting that there is something out there and that we have support to kind of help us structure something that we can make a big impact on long term. The other thing, the second item is I think it would be helpful for us to invite guest speakers to update us on things that are of local interest. So something for us to brainstorm in the future, or you can also send Elaine and I suggestions. We feel like there are things that are happening in our area that we may not be in the forefront of knowing about. And so we would just like to be open to inviting people and to kind of proactively think, who could we invite to a meeting to talk to us about things that are happening in our community. We have done some really great things, like we had the VDA come last year several times, and that was really helpful to us. I think that really bridged some relationships that I hope we strengthen moving forward. I have two other thoughts, suggestions, and once we have more information about our inventory and we have a survey and we have certain things in place, we could potentially re-engage some of the neighborhoods that we have approached in the past but unsuccessfully to get designations, and perhaps look at them again and learn from our camp colleagues when they did their own work to designate neighborhoods that didn't pass the first time, but then they did more outreach, more legwork, and then they were able to get them designated. And so I think that there's still some opportunity for us to take the work that was done in the past and see if we can revisit that. And then the last idea was we used to have a CCHPC app that people could access in the public, and we have talked about that on our subcommittee to find that app and maybe get that renewed, get that up and running again, and that could be part of our budget because we do have to have money to get that app and keep it functional. So that is something we had bounced around in our subcommittee, but we wanted to make it a more, commission-focused interest and see if we want to put it in our budget when we talk about our budget in the future. We could find out how much it costs, what it takes to maintain it, and then maybe if we have the money, we could get this app. So those are some of the priority activities, or some activities that we were thinking. Initially, we were going to send this in a survey to see what your thoughts were, but this is just an opportunity for us to, if you have, again, brainstorm ideas or things that you're interested in amping up our activities, we would welcome to hear them. You're welcome to say something now if you'd like before I turn the second portion over to Elaine, but if I'm going to first pause for a moment and see if anybody has any comments about what I just mentioned.
Hearing no comments, I'm going to take over the second portion. Commissioner Bond and I were talking recently, and we realized that over the past few months, we have heard different outreach activities brought up by different individuals, and we didn't know if the outreach committee had received those or were considering them, moving forward with any of them. So we created a list and had Bart contact Andy and John to discuss those, and we wanted to bring them up as a group, so that everyone knew that their ideas had been heard, but also to discuss this with the outreach community, or outreach, there's a word, subcommittee, thank you. The word just left me, to just go over them. So the first one that we had sent them was coordinating info sessions with the VDA and downtown businesses. Commissioner Bond was telling me that and she mentioned it earlier, during Revitalize Washington, she was walking up and down and talking to some of the local business owners, and they had no idea that we were a thing, even though they're kind of part of our overview. The next one was informational sessions for local universities and the public. I liked this idea because many of the students at Clark College and WSU, they're going for courses in anthropology, archaeology, architecture, public service, and if we could have either like semester sessions or go in there to do a class presentation, we would be impacting the next generations of people who fill our seats, or individual who lives in or works at a historic location who would like to make it a registered piece of history. Julie, Commissioner Bond, had seen at the local farmers market a booth for, who was it? Was it WSU? It was Master Gardeners, yes. And it would be interesting to find a partner organization to do a booth with us at some point, maybe in the fall, next spring, or just have an informational booth ourselves to discuss with the public the importance of local historic preservation, as the farmers market is at a historic location. Last year, or earlier this year, Commissioner Fraser had been approached, thank you, Julie, for being my thesaurus, by an individual who runs a local radio show. And he was curious if we would like to come on the show to discuss different issues of local preservation. And we haven't really discussed it since then, but I personally think it would be a great idea. I know not everyone here or listening are radio listeners, but we'll still reach some people who are. We've discussed it time and time again, a newsletter, and it doesn't have to be monthly, maybe quarterly or once a year, to reach out to individuals who are interested in history, to discuss what we're doing or different historic buildings in our area, the different commissioners, things like that. And then the last one that we sent to John and Andy was a rotating roster of commissioners to attend the lecture series at the Historical Museum. They're amazing lectures, and we fund them, so it would just make sense for us to be present at these events. Now that I've gone over them, the outreach activities individuals, if you've been following up on these, or other commissioners who would like to discuss different ideas that we haven't mentioned or ones that we have, please feel free to discuss.
Twice. There we go. Okay. I know Commissioner Gregg and I have not met to discuss any of this stuff yet, so for me, is coming onto this, seeing this list, like, this all makes perfect sense to me. I know through my work for the Fort Vancouver National Historic Site, they do a ton of stuff with Portland State University students, and so reaching out to them and other people of that ilk at WSUV or other, community colleges in the area makes total sense. I love that idea. Actually, I like all of these. We haven't had a chance to sit down and discuss anything and start to put, other ideas. I know we're going to have our National History Day coming up too, where we can even reach younger generations. But also within that event, because my school, we host the regional, all of our judges are historians from all over the region, all over the county. So that is beneficial. We definitely do that as well. But I've actually been on some of the radio hosts, radio shows, and one of the things to keep in mind too is they usually then archive them as podcasts, so they are listenable later on as well. So I can see a lot of good benefit coming from all of those things. And I don't know if Commissioner Gregg is there and wanted to speak in, but I love the rotating commissioners at the events as well. Those events are a lot of fun. We're all kind of history nerds here anyway, so I think we would have a good time there as well. So
I have some examples of the former newsletter, which was entitled The Preservation Post. And when Jackie Camp was our staff liaison, it came out, I think, quarterly at that time. And so I have some examples I'd be glad to bring to the December meeting. I will be attending in person. And also the commission has been represented on CCTV in the past to discuss what's going on. And so we do have precedents for these things. But I wanted to remind colleagues that the thing that really put these on hold was the pandemic. And for our newer members, we had 26 consecutive meetings in a remote format. And so the things that the chair and vice chair are bringing up need not be reinvented. They need to be resurrected. And so I think that there is format, there is groundwork, and the commission's participation in National History Day was also something that individuals attended on the Saturday in March. And so I think to regain our momentum in these important outreach efforts is not going to be difficult. And I think there is sentiment on the commission to bring these communication avenues back, including the newsletter, the app for cell phones. And we have, like I say, we have been on the radio and on TV shows before, and it's a lot of fun. And so it's just something we need to get reacquainted with. And I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andy and John. And it may be that you want a third member on your outreach group, so we can also revisit if you would like more support, because these are a lot of activities. So
another thing we could do, Chair Bond, is to make it a recurring agenda item so that we needn't have only 3 members taking part. And if we make this a regular part of the meeting, just like our review of the bylaws and the code, that to have outreach be, like I say, a recurring old business item that we visit to keep it in the forefront, then everybody can participate as opposed to just a few. That's just something to consider.
I think that's a really great idea. I don't have the capacity to be a member of that committee, like that subcommittee, but I was going to say that you were mentioning the Wazoo Master Gardeners booth. I'm actually finishing my certification through them next year, and they work out of the Heritage Farm. So I have a contact there that I could always reach out to, and I could help out in small ways, even if I'm not a part of that subcommittee. So I really like the option of kind of opening that up to each month. We can all kind of help out a little bit.
yeah, I love that. Thanks so much, Heidi. This is great. This is exciting. Okay, so those are just some ideas we wanted to share with you. Thank you for giving us the chance to kind of brainstorm with you, and we will keep those things in the foreground as we kind of check some of them off and are able to kind of make progress. The last item that I wanted to mention, and I would almost propose that this also be an agenda item depending on how things go, but I would like to just make a note of certain events that are coming up that we may be interested in as commissioners to support our partners. And so there are 4 activities that are coming up in the next month in November that I wanted to mention. And the first one is the last lecture series of this year at the Historical Museum is tomorrow, and it starts at 7. It's free, and it's the Campbells and the Columbian is the name of the lecture, and it's about this individual. He is going to speak about his great-grandfather Herbert Campbell and the Columbian, and it's going to be presented by William Campbell, who is the Columbian Innovation Editor. And so that is at 7 o'clock at the museum. It's not so much it's an event, but it's a webinar that is free to all of us. It's being hosted by the NAPC. So if you guys have been receiving their emails or their newsletters, this is a free webinar that you may want to participate in. It is on Thursday, November 16th, and it is focused on, it's called the ABCs of Historic Designation. And it looks actually very interesting and could be very helpful. It's 1 p.m. Eastern time, so I guess that's what, 10 o'clock our time? Yeah. Yep. So this can all be sent out. If you don't get the newsletter and you haven't seen this, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I could just forward it to you, or I could forward it to Susan. She could send it to the group, or Bart. But that is an activity that's webinar that may be of interest to some of us. The third one is also from the NAPC. They have like a 2-minute survey that they need some feedback on, local design review. And so just doing a little plug for that for us. I think we're the audience for that, so I think that would be helpful. And then the last one, I just looked on our partners' websites to see what kinds of activities they had going on. Holly did mention some of the things that are happening at the fort, so I won't restate those. But the Two Rivers History Museum also has an event on Saturday, and they have a local storyteller who is going to be talking about events from her ancestors who came to this part of the region in 1844. And so she'll be telling the story of her ancestors. So just a few history events that are hosted by our colleagues, our partners in the community, and I think it's worth us taking note and going if we're able to. So just wanted to mention those.
Chair Bone, before we move on, you mentioning those events is wonderful. I'm wondering if there's a way we can, without creating more work for ourselves, too much work, somehow post these things, like vet them and post, because otherwise, I mean, we're hearing you. We're in this room, but this is the commission. there's no other callers online.
Right.
So we would have to tell people. And if you want that to get out, there needs to be a different way. I don't know, Susan. I mean, I don't want to make work. I don't know. I'm seeing a grimace.
Maybe a great thing to add to the
Sending
app.
information.
Say that again?
Well, you guys are talking about having an app earlier, and I was thinking that if we had events on there at some point, I know that's down the line, but I was thinking that would be kind of a neat feature. Just different historic events in the community.
So the county cannot, well, we'll have to look into what we're able to put on our website and what we can't. Generally, we have a policy that we only include information from nonprofit agencies, not for-profit agencies. So I don't know if some of those are for-profit or not for-profit. But we do have our partners listed on the website, and people can get to their websites. I would be somewhat, I don't know if we have the capacity to keep up a list of events every month, frankly, yeah.
I hear everything you're saying, and all of that makes sense. You just read such a great laundry list of things, and I don't want it to just go into the nether. And so I'm trying to brainstorm. And we would probably have the same issue with a newsletter then, too. We'd have to vet every single thing that we listed to make sure we were promoting the correct type of organizations. I hadn't even thought of that.
Interesting question. If there are partners, even if they're for-profit, shouldn't we be able to, because like what if we did an event in tandem with them or gave them a grant?
These are all good questions. I think if it's good to ramp up outreach, but we need to answer these questions.
We do, and what, go ahead, I'm sorry.
The grants are only, the way the grant stuff is written, they're only available for government agencies or nonprofits. So we're not giving grant money to not private organizations or for-profit organizations. So we don't need to worry about that aspect of it. But Bart's right. Having been the city staff person for the Preservation Post newsletter, that is a tremendous amount of work because you have to get people to write the articles, and it requires a lot of nagging on staff's part. And Andy, bless him, wrote a lot of articles because we couldn't get other people to write them. So if we're going to do that, resurrect some kind of a newsletter, there needs to be a lot of thought that goes into that.
Well, if, like Andy said, we have the looping, this is going to be a looping comment. First off, Jan, that's awesome bringing up that we wouldn't be giving grants to for-profits, so that kind of circles around that issue. But if outreach is, as Andy was mentioning, just a thing that we did at each meeting, different people could be tasked with me having different articles each month, so that would kind of back down on the newsletters problem of getting articles ready to go so that a newsletter can go out. But back to the list of events that Julie had. Oh, and I lost where it was going. There's where it was. If we are putting the events on the newsletter or on our app, one person could be tasked with just finding all the events, and it wouldn't take too desperately long to go to each of our partners' websites and see their calendars upcoming. I don't think it would take too desperately long.
Another option is we could simply email you. If we have events we want to make note of in our meeting, we could send them to you, and then you could just put them on the under an event. Like today, I just said there's events and here's what they are. one of the sources that I used was the NAPC newsletter that we get, and that one's very helpful, and they have it all consolidated into one place. But I thought that webinar was I'm going to try and attend, even though it's during worked out hours, so I'll have to see, but I think that it's worth noting. And I think my intention, at least, is really you guys are my audience. I want us to know that these events are happening. I feel like we may not be able to be responsible for the whole, for the public to know, but at least we can represent the commission, if possible, at these events, if schedules permit. And I also think Elaine had a good idea in terms of the newsletter. And again, this is for our colleagues to kind of discuss themselves what they have the bandwidth to kind of approach. But we could easily have a 2-pager. If we could cut down on this massive newsletter, make it a front and back document, and have a template so we know, okay, we're going to feature a building, and then we're going to have a little picture of it and talk about it. You can create a template for ourselves so that it's more of a plug and play, but still captures interest and local relevant historical pieces. So there's lots of discussion, I think, that needs to happen outside these meetings about how to approach that, and then, we can find what works. But thank you, Bart, for that. Kudos. I just found these really interesting, and I really wanted to make sure everyone was aware. There's one other item I wanted to mention was going back to prioritizing certain activities and wanting to invite people to our commission to talk to us. One of the things we were brainstorming was we'd like to know more about the I-5 bridge, what the plans are, how that's going to impact us. I know we actually have, I believe we have, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I believe we have 2 colleagues that may be on some kind of group around that. But we wanted to invite, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry for being so loud. I am on that commission with Bart. The process for the I-5 bridge has been going on for so long that I know that, for instance, at our camp training, they were talking about money associated with it. There has been a lot of money associated with it, and there's been a lot of money poured out. There's been a lot of surveys. There's been a lot of historic surveys. There's been archaeological surveys. There's been a ton of surveys. There's been a ton of different kind of outreach. But that isn't something that we've ever really brought up in any of the meetings, was like, it is something that I've always thought about, like, what's the benefit for, like, Vancouver, for getting this bridge? Because, I can't stand the bridge that's there, but I can't imagine what's going to be there. It's going to be any better. It's going to be, if not worse.
And so, yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt you. So that was one of we would like someone to come and speak to us. One, to do a higher level overview. At my personal professional life, we had that presentation done by someone at the Oregon ODOT who came and did a presentation on the history of the project, where the plans are going and so forth. We're now closer to that. So I think there are people available if we can reach out to them. But good news is that Bart alerted me that that we were contacted recently, and I'll turn it over to you in a second, Bart, if you want to mention, but we have been asked if the Interstate Bridge Replacement group that is responsible for Section 106, I believe, that they can come and do a presentation to us next month. And so they are going to be coming to talk to us about that, and that may address the concerns that I had in my mind, just so we can understand the context of what does that mean and what's our place in this whole conversation. Do we even have a place? And if we, who does have that place? So that is a plan. I believe that they're going to be coming next month for our meeting. But
yeah, unless there's a reason why the commission does not want representative of the IBR Cultural Resources team, Haley Reff, she's willing to make a formal presentation and answer questions. Having sat in on multiple of their monthly webinars that they hold, I don't think she would be the person to talk about policy on the bridge. That's well above her pay grade. But what she and her team can talk about with authority is the cultural resources survey component and the area of impact and all these acronym soup that you get into with the federal level 106 reviews. that I'm not an expert in. So we will make a spot for their presentation if you guys agree.
I just know, I run into Mayor Ann all the time, and she is an expert on the bridge, just because, she's involved with that, every single day. We could always extend an invite to her to come and speak, but I know she's very busy. But, I mean, that bridge, it's actually kind of funny. One of my former students is now the transportation writer for the Columbian, and that's like one of his big pieces that he's been doing for the last several years. That original, going through the history of the original span and everything like that. And it's been around, and yeah, if we get an earthquake, that thing's the old one's going down to the bottom of the Columbia. That's, I guess, one of the big things. But we always need to keep in mind what are the other impacts of building something new, too.
Yeah, and I think the hope was just, is this going to impact our purview, which is our historic preservation components of the city and the area, and just to give us a better perspective on where do we fit into that.
And I know I'm on. I don't think, like what Bart was saying, when she comes and gives her presentation, she will be just giving a presentation on her cultural resource perspective and what the APE is and what they've done and what they're planning on doing or what they found or what they're avoiding. But it won't go into depth with the questions that you have.
Councilor Bond, or Chair Bond, we could ask Haley to bring someone with her that could go into the general information, and if you have specific things that you're interested in, we could send those to her and ask her if somebody could come with her, or if not in December, in the future.
Sure. I was going to say, is this of interest to everyone? Because really that was the hope of bringing it up, is that it would generate interest amongst all of us. I just know from the presentation I did before what he presented, and it made sense to me at the time, but I wasn't thinking necessarily, how does that cut into our city? How does that impact our downtown areas that have historic structures? And maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't impact them at all, but it would be nice to know that.
I can say from listening to the meetings, and especially recently, Holly and the Trust have been advocating for their holdings in their area pretty,
right,
pretty well. And from the county's perspective, it's all city land, so we kind of are just observers at this point. But I think the Historic Preservation Commission is, covers the whole county, and so, the email that we got, Jason's not here tonight, but it was with the transportation staff and city staff, and then to Jason, and then forwarded to us just recently. And so sounds like Haley is very willing to come, and we can ask if maybe she can bring somebody else with her and make it more of an ongoing update, kind of like the downtown folks have been doing.
I think that it looks like I'm getting head nods. So yes, I think that sounds like a great idea. Thank you.
Okay.
And that was the last item on the announcements / items of interest. Unless any other person here may have something they'd like to add to this list of things.
Are we on the good of the order? Or just to piggyback off of the events that you had mentioned, I just got to attend the 25th anniversary for the Historic Trust, who is one of our partners. And you're right, those types of events, when we can attend them, I think is a good idea to make sure that people know we exist and things. And it's always, you get to go usually hang out in a historic building too, which is part of what we're looking at, we do our work with. And so it's a lot of fun to be able to go to those events when we can too, so.
The only thing that I was going to add is if you are really interested in like the events, like what you're talking about, I'm president of a board, and I do the very same thing that you do, and bring events every single month to the group. But to bring them further, we have an online calendar that our secretary just takes everything that we bring them in the meeting and sticks it on the online calendar for our constituents who are interested. so they can just do it at their own will. So that maybe is an idea for your website update.
Perfect. Thank you, Morgan. Okay. If there are no other questions or items for discussion from the commission or commissioners, we'll move on to the good of the order. Anyone have any items for the good of the order? No? Okay. Well, then, if there are no comments, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I
This is
second.
Commissioner Frazier.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, this concludes today's meeting on November 1st. Thank you.
Well done, everybody.
Thanks, Andy.
Night.
Good night.